want to thank you for spending part of the morning with us, and in this particular case, to talk about resiliency in supply chain, and of course, from our perspective, the global connections that all these resiliency themes have sort of come together, and most of you, if not all of you, would certainly be part of this global commerce ecosystem that we have in our region. Most of you probably know the Pendleton Group. For those that might not be familiar with us, we're a group of professionals in the economic development field, assisting communities, organizations, and companies develop and deploy business and economic development strategies. Guy Tessler, who is follow me quickly, with someone talk a little bit more about the series, and I specialize specifically on connections and growth of foreign companies that call Georgia home, and help them to grow. We also work with domestic companies reaching foreign markets, and of course, we have a pretty robust engagement in foreign markets, trying to help foreign direct investment grow in our region. But we also have from our group here several persons. I see, of course, Lauren, who's part of this, has been part of our, hi Lauren, with us, and then since the beginning, helping us with the marketing. But we also have Amanda Shalandra and Steve. Good morning, everybody, from the Pendleton Group with us. So, but to learn more about what we do, I urge you to check our website. It's the www.pendletonatlanta.com. And I'll turn it over to Guy now to talk a little bit more about what we're doing. And again, great seeing all your faces, and looking forward to this conversation. Go ahead, Guy.
Thanks, Jorge. I'm really excited that as we start with this series and move on, we have some people that have been to all of these conversations, which kind of tells me that they find value in it. So apparently it's some sort of indicator that what we're doing makes sense to people and provides something needed. The differentiator here is that this is about a conversation, not sending out information or informing people or themselves, but a real conversation that can eventually lead to solving different issues that came up in recent times. And we had a few examples of in follow-up activity that some issues that were addressed at the at these conversation was followed up on and hopefully resolved, as well as an opportunity to see faces and participate. So Trevor will set the rules of the game, but basically we expect a conversation. Trevor will call on whoever may have something to add to it, and if perhaps by some kind of raising finger or something like that, or raising your hand or something like that, you have something to say. You don't have to necessarily ask a question, or you can definitely make a comment or add your experience in the topic related to add to the value of this engagement. Trevor.
And if you're wondering why we don't have 100 people in here, we literally intentionally kept it small and invite only so that we could foster this kind of interaction. So please do take advantage of that. Make sure, I mean, let's try not to talk over each other. If you can, sort of wave at me, or you can send me a chat if someone's in the middle of a long spiel or something, and we can keep going. But I'm going to introduce who we are calling, not our panelists, because we don't want to call it a panel. But we're calling it our featured speakers, our two folks who are going to kick it off for us. We did have someone from a French company called Exotech, which I was very excited about because it sounds like they do a lot with robotics and technology and warehouses and things like that. But unfortunately, their representative, Rudy, had to bow out at the last minute for an unforeseen engagement. So we, on the positive, more time for conversation. So we have Steve Mall, who's the Chief Revenue Officer from Locator X here in Atlanta. Hey, Steve. And then
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. And we've got Elliott Paige, who's the Director of Air Service at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. Hey, Elliott.
Morning.
Cool. So we'll get started with y'all for just a second. I think we do have a few people who've not come on previous events, so I do want to go ahead and get y'all to introduce yourselves. I'm gonna just forgive me if I don't recall. If I call on you and you have been here before, please forgive me. Sometimes I'm focused a bit too much on conversation. But Jeff Lamb is with us from DJ Powers. Hey Jeff, how are you doing? Give us a one breath introduction of yourself and what you're up to.
I'll take a big breath. Morning, everyone. I'm the Director of Business Development for DJ Powers. I have been long involved with the District Export Council as well here in Atlanta, and familiar with the supply chain issues, both air freight and ocean freight, and look forward to the conversation.
Cool. Jacques Marcotte is here as well. Jacques.
Good morning. Palomar Associates is my practice. I work with international companies coming to North America. In some cases, North American companies going overseas. So Jeff and I have known each other for quite a few years. We've become good friends, and we're both fellow Canadians, so that's a good start. And Jeff's actually helping me with some air freight and sea freight issues coming from Europe right now. So that's of interest. And another part of my business is working with a client that does a lot of capital financing of construction projects. So I'll be interested to see what the audience thinks of manufacturing of pharmaceutical products coming back to the US. There are different schools of thoughts, and I'd like to know what you guys think of it. Thanks again for having us and having me today, Trevor.
No problem, thanks. I think, Steve Steve Smith, I don't think you joined us before physically. Maybe you've watched some of the video recordings, I know, as a representative of Pendleton, but can you tell us what you do?
Sure. Thank you, Trevor. Appreciate the opportunity. I'm a member of the Pendleton Group, and as Jorge explained earlier, we welcome all to take a look at our website. But my area of expertise, if you will, centers around working with communities, cities, and counties in terms of economic development strategy planning. Also, we deal with some private companies as well, representing them to elected officials throughout the state of Georgia. That's me.
All right, cool, thanks. And Hector, I think you're muted before, so if you can unmute yourself, then we can hear you. Still muted. Let me see if I can get you. There you go. Go ahead. We got you now.
Okay. Hector Romero, with Hector Javier Romero, CHB, with licensed custom broker, MBM International Logistics. I've been in the one way or another in the logistic business for 40 years, 25 years at Delta Airlines, and then after that on my own since 2012. And all I can say is that we're busy as hell. I mean, we're busy. We are flat out running. Personally, I'm working almost 7 days a week. I worked the whole 4th of July. We're just really, really busy. It's really amazing.
Wow.
We just had a few hiccups on the air freight side, but people creatively are finding a way to get their cargo through and bring it over here. So so that's kind of an interesting thing.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting into that. That'll be fascinating. And then I wanted to reintroduce Marco Basato. Marco is from EDOM. He's was one of our featured speakers in the first event on foreign investment. Do you want to introduce yourself again?
Sure. My name is Marco Basato. I'm the managing director of LUCIA at EDOM. We're a global engineering consulting firm that decided, thanks to Jorge actually, to establish our operations here in Atlanta a year and a half ago. Thanks for the opportunity. I'm very interested to have the debate.
No
Marco, you're part of the Point A group over at the Georgia Pacific.
Yes, we're actually co-hosted here. In the background, you see the facility that they just opened a couple of weeks ago, and here at Georgia Pacific Center. So hopefully by September, we can invite you to visit this amazing place.
Sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Well, all right, let's go ahead and get going. There's some other people, but I don't want to, if their video's off, I'm assuming that's for a reason, probably multitasking here. But want to go ahead and get started with Steve Mall. Steve, tell us a bit about Locator X. I mean, I know that I've tried, maybe successfully, maybe unsuccessfully, to write a little bit about y'all. Part of it's straightforward, but you have so many different offerings, services, software, and potentially in the future some tracking hardware that's really, really small. So give us the brief update on y'all.
Sure, happy to. And thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you guys today. I'm interested in the conversation, not just, I really appreciate the fact that you differentiated this from a webinar, because conversations are much more meaningful. So Locator X is in the business, and our mission is to change the way people will trust, track, and find the most important things in their lives. And that's a pretty vague statement at the end of the day, but it's also one that allows the individual who will use our tools and technology to personalize it. And if you think about what was most important to us 6 months ago, ventilators and N95 masks and PPE would probably not have made the list. Mm-hmm. So the variability there is helping our clients figure out where their stuff is and trust the legitimacy and the genuine and authenticity of those goods that they receive. So what we're working towards, and what made us kind of well known early on, was hold the exclusive patent on, or the license to the exclusive patent on a miniaturized atomic clock. So if you know anything about atomic clocks, they're usually about the size of a room. They're huge. They're what GPS satellites use to be very precise in their timekeeping. And the University of Oxford has created a man-made molecule that actually acts as a miniaturized atomic clock. And as I said, we hold the exclusive rights to that on a worldwide basis. And what we're doing from a technology perspective is integrating that into a very small chipset that will eventually be a label form factor. And the molecule is not the hard part. As I was saying to Trevor before we got started, the hard part is getting that into a flat form that can go onto a label that has multiple radios in it, can do terrestrial communication instead of GPS communication, and has the antennas that will allow you to precisely locate anything you want to apply it to. So where tile's a great thing with Bluetooth right now, and GPS works great if you're not inside a building or a tunnel, our chipset's going to actually allow you to find things anywhere on the planet. So that's what we're working on, but we are not waiting for that in order to bring products to the market. So our general areas of engagement with our clients are around 3 different things. One is location tracking, both in supply chain, asset tracking, warehouse management, things like that. With consumer engagement, because one of the things that we believe is a value add to the marketplace is for a consumer to be able to interact with a product and its manufacturer in bidirectional and highly secure and private ways. And I can go into that if you'd like. That's probably not the gist of today's conversation. But the third one is authentication. Right now we are seeing, while supply chains are in fact stressed to deliver life-saving materials to the marketplace, that is that's an engraved invitation to counterfeiters to start throwing fake product into the market. And it's everything from masks, gloves, stethoscopes, medications, it doesn't matter. If there's money to be made, a counterfeiter will make it. And right now, there's not an easy way to authenticate the legitimacy or the genuineness of a product. And we have a mechanism that we're talking to a lot of people about doing in great volumes to help authenticate those capabilities or those products to the consumer, so they have a greater degree of trust that they're actually buying a legitimate product.
Yeah, so give us a brief synopsis on how, once you're able to get your miniature atomic clock chipset developed, how will that be different from the existing like RFID technology that's out there to track items as they go around the world?
Sure, great question. Well, RFID has to have a receiver, right? You have to have an antenna that can connect to that RFID chip, and even think about it in a retail environment or in a warehouse environment. Once the RFID chip goes past that last antenna, it's unknown to the owner of the product. It has to be picked up by another antenna somewhere else along the way that may or may not be owned by you. So it may be picked up by another antenna or reader device, but you may not have access to that data. Whereas, because we'll be using terrestrial radio, both LTE and 5G, and perhaps others as well as they develop, as long as you can connect to a cell tower somewhere, we'll be able to find it.
Good. That was a very succinct layman's terms definition of that. So I appreciate that.
Sure.
Tell us how you sort of pivoted from the during the COVID pandemic. Obviously, I think that y'all created sort of a national ventilator tracking. Did that really take off?
Yeah, it's not as, it hasn't taken off as much as we would like, and I'll tell you why, but there's actually new life coming into it. So back in mid-March, I was watching television one night, and I can't even remember what show it was, but somebody had said, you know what, we need Silicon Valley to help us figure out a way to track ventilators because we don't know where they are and we don't know who has them to lend. And in my mind, I'm saying, why does Silicon Valley have to do that? I live in Atlanta. We have a lot of smart people in Atlanta. Why can't we do that in Georgia? And so in about 12 days, which is the fastest I've ever stood a product up in my entire life, and I've been in the technology space for decades, a lot of them. I'm old. So we stood up what we call the National Medical Device Registry. And what we're enabling anybody who owns a ventilator, literally anybody, nursing home, healthcare facility, manufacturer, it doesn't matter. We will register those devices free, put a tracker on them, optical based at this point, because there's just not enough radio based trackers available in the market today to do those. And they have control over the data. We're not going to share the data with anyone except in quantity. So if California needs to borrow ventilators, they'll at least be able to go on here and say, well, you know what, Montana has 30 we might be able to get our hands on. We're not going to negotiate the borrowing. That's not our job. But allowed, and so we're talking to ventilator manufacturers to continue doing that. But what it did, surprisingly, was open up the conversation to virtually any mobile medical device. Beds, gurneys, oxygen concentrators, CPAP machines, BiPAP machines. If it's in healthcare and it's mobile, they're interested in tracking it. So that's one of the things that is starting to have conversations. We've also had pretty extensive conversations with the FDA, who has a mechanism for identifying these assets, and we're looking to leverage that instead of even having to put a separate identifier on it, so that a mere scan with our app would tell you where that device came from, how long it's been in service. You'd be able to, once you registered it with our app, you'd be able to change status, right? On a patient, off a patient, needs repair, lent it to New York, got it back from New York, because quite honestly, all of the ventilators that New York borrowed, my hunch is they haven't all been returned, or we don't even know where they all are. And that's not anyone's fault. It's just a fact of the, so that's not manufacturer supply chain, but it's still supply chain issues, because where are they going to get these materials?
Yeah, it's so interesting, because it's something like you would sort of assume that we would have that worked out already, but it's amazing what we still need to do.
You'd kind of thought that, but no. COVID has presented challenges in that aftermarket track and trace that nobody ever considered the need for.
Yeah. So Jacques, I see your hand. Ani's also got a question. I'm going to jump.
Question for Steve.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, let me jump to Elliott real quick, and then we'll come back and open up the broader conversation. Elliott, so obviously huge drop in traffic at the airport in March and April, right? Especially April. I think I heard GM John Sullivan say it was 97% drop on like April 8th. And I know that you are the director of air service on both sides. We're not going to belabor the passenger side too much. I wanted you to just give us a sense for how things have shifted on the cargo side. I know, given what Steve was just saying, we had a lot of folks trying to figure out how to get healthcare PPE items into the country, and air cargo seems to have shot through the roof, at least initially. And you're still hosting a lot of cargo flights, even when the passenger flights were down. So can you just tell us a little bit about that transition, what it looked like?
But yeah, I mean, in the beginning, we lost a lot of capacity because we lost belly cargo. You know, Atlanta is because of our high connections and, you know, over 170 cities domestically, 70 international. We had a lot of belly capacity. And people always forget that a lot of cargo moves under the belly of a passenger plane. So when we lost that, and that happened globally, of course, we saw a dip in cargo. But at the same time, we saw an increase in the number of freighters coming to the airport. So today alone, we're forecast to have around 51 freighters, 20 or so in South Cargo. And a lot of that is bringing regular cargo, but also a lot of special cargo on PPEs. About 2 weeks ago, I actually had our very first EVA Airlines passenger flight from Taipei, but it was filled with boxes, a passenger plane with boxes on the seats, and the seats covered in cargo nets. And it's bizarre to see a brand new 777, beautiful aircraft with just boxes in the overhead compartment and in the seats, no passengers. So, you know, we hosted the Antonov 124 a couple of weeks ago, packed with just mass for this region. And
that's a Russian plane, right?
Yeah, that's a Ukrainian company.
Ukrainian.
And you know, and so cargo is booming on it's booming on the freighter side, but we still don't have enough capacity to move cargo. So what you see is, I mean, Jeff will tell you that the rates have skyrocketed. It's very expensive today to move cargo, and that's why some airlines are realizing that they can make money moving boxes more so than moving passengers, because if passengers don't want to fly, you know, boxes want to fly, and they're expensive. They're paying a lot of money to move boxes now. So you find some airlines like Air Canada, a little bit of United, EVA from Taipei, and a couple of airlines around the world have caught on and are actually putting boxes on passenger aircrafts. It's not as efficient. If you imagine the aircraft still has a small door for just passengers. Right. So you need a lot of manual labor to move the boxes, and it's hard to practice social distancing if you're moving between the aisles with boxes. So it's not the most efficient, and you know, we think when passengers return, hopefully soon, and that depends a lot on what happens to countries, how countries are able to eradicate COVID, not just reduce it, but eradicate it. That, you know, then we'll see maybe more passengers flying and less boxes on actual passenger seats. So it's a strange time, and we're happy that cargo continues to function.
Yeah. Well, give us a sense for what y'all have been doing on the land side of the airport to prepare for increased cargo, even before all this happened. Speaking of, you know, Steve was talking about tracking and figuring out where things are at all times. I know that y'all have partnered with Amsterdam to put in a new cargo community system, which is, as far as I understand it, kind of a tech platform where freight forwarders and customs brokers and other cargo folks can see in somewhat real time where their goods are after having arrived at the airport, and supposedly helping with the congestion on the trucking side, from what my very rudimentary understanding of it.
No, you understand it perfectly.
Okay.
I mean, way prior to any idea of COVID-19, we had the challenge where we were always trying to increase efficiency, always trying to make it faster, because the reason you ship by air is for it to be safe and fast. And we're pretty safe, but the fast on the ground handling side, sometimes we're a bit slow. So one of the things we did was to reduce some of the truck congestion was to open a truck staging area, and trucks would go there first, and then get using a cloud platform, they could get an appointment or a space at a specific dock door for them, like a reservation. We also added, as you mentioned, the cargo community system last year. We're actually having a seminar, webinar. Ben and myself and Mary Waters from GDEC is going to host a webinar on the 21st, and you all are invited to participate as well. But one of the things we launched in November, and we had a couple of stakeholders, freight forwarders, ground handlers, trucking companies that signed up, and airlines that signed up. And then we're in the process of starting to get more people interested by kind of educating the community about it. And then COVID happened, the lockdown happened. And now we realized that if we can promote this technology where people don't have to move around with airway bills and paper documents and one person passing a document to another person, which could transmit the virus, and we're just using technology where you can stay in your office and approve delivery orders and airway bills and pay whatever fees you need to pay. Then this is also a solution for COVID-19 for the stakeholders to continue to work safely. So we're promoting it as that, and we have to do it through webinars now to get more people interested. So we're now starting to do that again. COVID just kind of put a spin and a slowdown on our marketing efforts. So that continues.
Can you talk about the irony of the fact that generally the cargo side has been somewhat the underutilized aspect of Hartsfield-Jackson, right? We're known for being the busiest passenger airport in the world, even by operations most years, by a number of flights and takeoffs and landings. But the cargo side's always been that side that hasn't seemed to have realized its potential, and y'all have been pushing for more flights coming in at night when there's not so many passenger flights, more dedicated freighters coming from places like Asia. And now you seem to have it. And I kind of wonder, how are y'all thinking about making this sustainable, even when the landscape shifts a bit?
Yeah, it's very typical of airports where, passengers can complain, they vote, they tweet, they talk to their politicians, and so we all forget about cargo. And people who are not in logistics think that their packages magically appear on their doorstep. So it's an opportunity for the industry to make itself seen, to show its importance. I tell every opportunity I get to talk to folks not involved in logistics, I try to promote the industry. It's what's kept, I consider it one of the heroes of this community in protecting us from coronavirus. And, we work very closely with the ground handlers. They have implemented a lot of safety features to make sure their staff can go to work safely. They're wearing masks. They have deep clean routines. And they're now getting accustomed to that, because we don't know when this will end, but we have to continue to function even with COVID-19. It was a little, difficult in the beginning because, people didn't want to come to work. They were receiving stimulus packages. It was better to stay home. They made more money from unemployment and stimulus package. But now that's running out. People want to come to work, and we just got to make sure that they're safe. And so the airport has had for a number of years a lot of plans to develop new warehouse facilities, state-of-the-art warehouse, implement new technology to help improve cargo, implement the truck staging area. And we'll continue to implement these measures because even with or without COVID, they're going to help to make us more efficient and more competitive.
Hey, Elliott, I'm sorry, Trevor. Elliott, just make sure you send us, and Ben, if you could send us the information for the webinar that you mentioned, that GDEC is putting together, that you're putting together with GDEC, because we could post that in our website.
Okay, I'll do that. I'll do it after this meeting.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah, and I think that's so interesting what you're saying, Elliott, because also, you know, cargo is not spooked by pandemics, right? Like we still need cargo even when passengers aren't flying. And so I would think there's an increase in the desire to kind of build that side of the business up for diversification, especially now when you never know when you know, passengers going to recover. But I know we had some questions. Ani, I think, had the first question, and I have people I want to bring into the conversation and call out, but I'll let y'all ask a few questions in the spirit of conversation right now, and then we'll kind of see where it goes from there. Ani, did you want to ask your question first? I think it's for Steve Mull.
Yeah, Steve, I have worked in technology, and I have specifically worked in RFID technology. So I'm trying to wrap around hand to your business model, because RFID nowadays has gone at to molecular level. So in other words, you know, UPC code is painted on a book, or it is inserted in a Mint code button or in a Rolex watch, and the user gets a verification method of, if you buy a Rolex watch, you put in front of something and then it says it's a genuine thing. With that background, I want to ask, I'm trying to get a better understand, because, you know, the chip which you have developed or you have patented, I mean, that's like huge work, you know, in terms of collecting all the information. So what's your revenue generation model?
We'll do a couple of different ways. We're going to have a fairly small direct sales force. We're going to be looking through strategic licensing partnerships, people who will want to embed the technology into their product and into their packaging, because the mechanism will either be in the product itself, if that's applicable, or in the packaging related to it. Because the other thing that we know when we talk to manufacturers is because we do it everything down to the level of each, right? Whereas a UPC code speaks to the SKU. And so that, you know, you have one UPC code for every tube of toothpaste in the carton, right? So they're all the same, but we mark things to the each level. So we can identify each individual tube of toothpaste that's in there, or package of headset, an individual headset, or an individual item. And the reason that's important is not just for authentication, but it's for consumer engagement. Whereas most consumer engagement today on the retail side is you can, again, scan the UPC code, or I might even get a QR code that says connect to the manufacturer, but you're generally going to a regular web page where it's unidirectional, or maybe I have to give you my email address in order to sign up. What we're building is a bidirectional mechanism for largely anonymous interaction. There might be some transactions where identification would be important. So like if I'm registering a product for a warranty, or I'd like support, I might have to tell you who I am. But if I would just like to know the product's provenance, where it came from, how it got here, when was it manufactured, does this have anything in there that, is it renewable because I have a particular sustainability penchant? All of those types of things can be bidirectional in nature. I can give the company information, or I can get information from the company without ever identifying myself. And we believe that's going to be a big market draw, because the need for privacy is just ever increasing. One of the things I talked to the New Food magazine last fall was, and we're talking to a couple of people about applying this in their own applications, is right now there's package labeling laws on food product, right? Because of allergies and sensitivities. And right now the labeling requirements are such that you have to list out everything that might cause an allergic reaction. And quite literally, they're running out of label space. With our technology, you'd be able to do a quick scan. You tell your app what you're allergic to. It will tell you whether or not it's safe to eat with a quick scan. And that will make things safer for people to buy. Same thing on medicinals, pharmaceuticals, cosmetics. Right now, the amount of counterfeit product that's out there, and that's, I wouldn't put anything on or in my body that I bought off of some large commercial retail outlets. because you just can't trust that it's authentic. There's too much fake product out there. It's a $2 trillion a year problem.
Right. So,
Jacques,
one second.
Sure.
You know, how do you justify cost of this per unit chip?
Well, it depends on when you take advantage of it, right? Like any technology, the first iteration is probably not going to be the last iteration. So our expectation is that this will get to the form factor and the price point that will be sub-penny per item. When you're making 1 trillion of them a year, it's going to be less expensive.
Yeah. Jacques, did you have a question still?
I did, but my friend Annie stole it away from me. So forgive him this time.
Good.
But one question, there's going to be in the individual product that you're monitoring or tracking, there's got to be a minimum value. An expensive watch got tremendous value. It's nothing. Tube of toothpaste got a different price and margin.
Right.
Is there a point where it doesn't make sense? And if it doesn't make sense in cases where you use it individually, is there value of having the product inserted into the, I'm not sure if it's a pallet, the board, the corrugated board, or what have your thoughts been?
Yeah, exactly. So like right now we're talking with a pharmaceutical company whose product is about $50 per unit, right? So they can absorb a dime or 15 cents in cost right now. And that doesn't even require the chip. They just want to be able to tell their consumers, scan here, so I can tell you this specific package, not the whole box or anything else, but this specific package is authentic. And so they can absorb that, like you said, very easily. But if I'm down to the 99-cent tube of toothpaste, I may not be able to absorb more than a half a penny in additional cost. My margin isn't going to do it. I think manufacturers are going to look at it two ways. Brand managers who have profitability targets are going to look at it in a pure cost basis. Brand protection people are going to look at it in reputational costs, because manufacturers today know there's a counterfeiting problem. And it's often a problem from their own manufacturing facilities. We've run into a couple of instances where the people who are being cheated, they suspect their manufacturers offshore from being the ones. You know, the day shift makes the legitimate product, the evening shift comes in and is maybe making the fake product, or they're in collusion with you. They're just concerned about that. And so the authentication, you can control that by the way in which you even label the products today. And our technology allows you, so if you say, well, why don't the counterfeiters will just copy the label? Well, the minute they do that, we detect the duplicate and both get marked as suspect. So counterfeiters are going to go where the resistance is least.
Yeah.
And so if they know that they're going to get detected, they're going to start to go for products that aren't using that kind of technology. So I think it's both a cost and a brand reputation issue.
And what do you think the ramp up time to go from the $50 product, which makes a lot of sense, a cream like La Mer or something like this, to the 99 cents product? Is it a 1 year or 3 year adoption rate, do you think?
Well, if you're waiting for the atomic clock,
your chip will go down in cost in a big way.
Right. If you're waiting for the atomic clock, it probably will be an 18 to 36 month time frame. It just probably, but even today, even using our printed labels, optical scans, because of the encryption mechanism and what we call the product certificate authority, which is a digital hash of that code that identifies duplication of it. And what's the best way to put it? We've got time and motion or time and distance triggers in there. So if you scan one in Oklahoma City today and one in Atlanta, an hour from now, we go, wait a minute, that cannot be the same item. Just cannot be, right? Physically can't get there. So we can start to track those things today just with an optical scan for literally a couple of pennies.
Yeah, I wanted to get back sort of to the international side of things.
Sure.
Obviously, the technology is pretty amazing. We've talked about it for a long time, and I'll bring Ben in on that as well, because Ben, I want to hear your thoughts in a few about just how Atlanta is growing as an ecosystem, what types of investments we're seeing, and how we're becoming more attractive to various types of companies. But I wanted to ask Jeff, from a company perspective, what are you seeing in terms of the adoption of air freight versus ocean, particularly in the early days of COVID versus now? And how's that panning out with people having to absorb those higher costs, but in the imperative to get things in quickly?
Right. When the going gets tough, the air freight gets going. You know, it's you realize more than ever, and Elliott and Hector, I'm sure, will agree that while we normally sit in the background and not a lot of people pay attention, but you do all of a sudden when you need it. You know, when there's no physical way to move something halfway around the world, then air freight all of a sudden becomes a much higher priority. So ironically, what we saw was in the very beginning kind of a big upswing in demand because the supply chains fairly quickly got disrupted. You know, roughly speaking, air freight is generally about 3% of transportation in general. But so all, you know, so when something big happens to that 97%, it has a huge impact on air freight very quickly. And then, of course, at the same time, as Elliott said, you had a massive withdrawal from the market of the capability of moving the cargo. So, you know, I think 60-some% of air freight, I'm thinking about transatlantic specifically, moves in the belly of passenger aircraft. So when you take all that away, all of a sudden things get much more challenging. But generally what we saw was, ironically, an immediate upswing in demand. Of course, the prices went way up. You saw some very creative solutions right away with passenger airlines, as Elliott described, using their passenger aircraft to move cargo, 100% cargo flights on passenger aircraft. But generally what we've seen is the air freight revenues for airlines have held about steady because of a combination of the price going up as well as making immediate adjustments on how that cargo can fly by having these all cargo passenger flights, by pulling freighters out of the desert. So they were able to adjust pretty quickly, but that's the crazy thing, is that the revenue is held pretty steady for the airlines on the cargo side, even though most of the capacity disappeared. So there were some very big adjustments that happened to keep things moving. We're starting to see some of the rates come back down to earth out of Asia. I saw some rates this morning that were almost back to normal on specific lanes like PBG back to North America. The European rates are still very high because there's just not the capacity to move that yet. So generally, if that answers your question, Trevor.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, things have held steady, but it's like that duck in the water. Everything looks pretty smooth, but their legs are going very busy underneath the water. That's the way we've been able to keep things moving.
Yeah, definitely. Hector, you know, you said you were working nonstop 7 days a week nowadays. Can you give us a sense for what's going on the ocean side as well, and how people are making the decision on what mechanism to use, and then what changes have you seen to the ability to clear cargo into the U.S.? Has it become more stringent with your items and things like that?
Yeah, well, usually we kind of gauge in our business how things are coming along based on the what we do. We have to file what we call ISF, Importer Security File, and usually these are for ocean shipments, and we usually get these done almost a month or right before the sailing. And many of the sailings take about a month, at least 2 weeks, depending where it's landing to, what port it's landing is going to be. Since the pandemic, we have not really slowed down. Well, we have been steady. And actually, I kind of welcome for a couple of weeks of things quiet down because I was able to catch up with some things that I've not been able to do in years. But other than that, things have really picked up tremendously. And just to give you an idea, I spent the whole 4th of July weekend working. We just have tons of shipments coming in, ocean freight coming in, that we have to get taken care of. So, and this weekend is no different. And last weekend the same. I had people coming work extra on Saturdays. You know, we have a warehouse here full of cargo. It was empty for 2 days, and now it's back up full again with PPE and We have furniture, and we have latex gloves and flooring and all kinds of stuff like that. So the only area that we have seen, it's been a little bit complicated, like I said, but people have been very creative about it. It's been the air freight, especially out of South America. We don't have, we never really have a really good lift out of South America into Atlanta, but mostly all belly cargo, most from Delta. And now that they're not flying over there, people are finding other alternatives, mostly shipping the stuff through Miami. And then, I've seen some pretty creative type of shipping lanes, And so that part is kind of adjusting somewhat, but people are making it happen. And as far as the regulatory portion is, we've seen customs going to a new system called ACE. Most people in the business are familiar with that, and they're becoming a lot more intrusive. The stuff that we have to do, the more agencies that we have to report to, that we didn't have to, and then it's just a matter of educating the importers of what we need, what has to be done now. Yeah. Compared to what used to be, so that is a little bit extra work. Also, the exclusion tariffs are.
Yeah, I was about to say this is all on top of the tariff issues that we were having even before the pandemic, right? That have not.
That's right. You got the exclusions going on right now. There are over 2,000 exclusions. A lot of these are going to be expiring. Most of these are going to be expiring this year, later on, August, September, and some in July too. I think around the 20th of July, but anyway, so there have been some extensions to these exclusions, but not really many. And so it's just a matter of educating the importers, on some of these exclusions are very narrow and they're very precise, and they have certain parameters that have to be met. So it's just a matter of having that. It's just not for everything. It's just a matter of telling people, hey, does your product really fit this
code,
right?
Industry classification code.
Right, because if it varies from that, then it doesn't qualify,
Exactly.
So,
Well, Lucia, I think you had a question, but also I wanted to ask you about Brazil. Have you seen, companies in Brazil looking at the U.S. differently or being creative about shipping things here, things like that, and then ask your question, I guess, to Elliott.
Okay, well, certainly that Hector mentioned that the airlines are not flying into Brazil and Brazilian airlines are not flying into the US. So that has been not the US, but I would say Atlanta specifically, because there's still some flights out of Miami to Brazil. However, only for US citizens. So that has created a bit of an issue for Brazilians trying to travel. But as far as cargo, I would say that Hector is a better person to say what's going on. At the Brazilian Chamber recently, we have done a lot of work with companies trying to supply to the US some of their products that they needed to sell out because there is not a market in Brazil right now. So we have helped some companies doing that through the Amazon platform, through e-commerce platform. And for that reason, they are using this creative way of shipping their pallets to warehouses here in the US by other routes. So my question to Elliott was that as you struggled with this new change, or better say, the increase in demand for air freight, or more airlines landing here to bring products, what do you see are the gaps right now in order to make your job better, or to create opportunities for companies that are sitting idle, not knowing what to do next? If there is a need for more warehouse, more refrigerator warehouse, how to expedite or improve this process to make sure that we as representatives of international companies can say, look, this is what is the demand right now. As more cargo are coming in, maybe increase in transportation lanes or whatever is necessary that we can advise some of these investors that are waiting on the sideline to say, well, what is the best thing that I can do right now?
Yeah, and I want to augment that question too by asking about especially the refrigerated and perishable side at the airport. I know that's always been an issue of limiting our ability to track some cargo, especially from Latin America, because it's, you know, we're competing against Miami on that front, who apparently have a lot more refrigerated warehousing space and easier customs clearance, things like that. But you can tell me if I'm wrong.
I would say we're not competing with Miami.
Okay.
Love to hear that.
Miami has a lot of capacity on perishables for a variety of reasons, some of which are historic, dating back to free trade area of the Americas, if any of you are old enough to remember that. Yeah. So, you know, and the whole trade negotiations on tropical products versus narcotic and illicit products. So, you know, so we're not competing with them on that, but there are, we do have a shortage of refrigerated space on the airport. That's something. Delta has some space. Delta, in fact, contacted us, and we in turn contacted a couple of shippers and some of our ground handlers, saying that they weren't using it for, you know, February, March, April, because they didn't have any cargo at the time, any perishable anyway. So they were willing to rent the space out to at least make some money. We, in our RFI for the new cargo building, we did require them to have the capacity to handle perishables. I know that one of our ground handlers has like reefers at the moment that they're using to handle some perishables. These are temporary solutions in my view, and you know, we need more permanent solutions. In terms of what could be done to what's needed, what's the gap, I would say it's technology. We don't have that much space. We're in a big city, and so we're space constrained. And as a result, we can build more warehouses, but it's going to get to a point where we can't do anymore. We can't build anymore. And so we have to create systems that make cargo move. I always use the phrase, make cargo move at the speed of baggage. And it's for us logistics nerds who understand that when you leave, when you get through, come off the aircraft, Delta in particular, your bag always arrives at the conveyor belt before you do. And if we could have cargo moving at that speed, then we're efficient. Then that's when I consider that we're super efficient. And that's kind of the dream that I have. You know, when we can get something off of an aircraft and get it through a warehouse, get all the checks and balances in place, and get it to a truck within 30 minutes, then we're super efficient. And we can do that. It has been done and is being done in other countries. Our challenge is, a lot of it is technology. We don't have the systems in place for all of the stakeholders to speak to each other. We have that now with the cargo community system. Other companies that have that include like Amazon, FedEx, UPS, they have their own closed loop system. So we're now trying to develop a system where different companies on different platforms can trust each other, at least on a specific area, cargo that they all have in common. They can all talk to each other about that and create a record on the complete track and trace of that consignment. So I think it's technology. That's the answer. The simple answer to your question: technology, and applying these technology, making sure that they're universally used. If you can imagine, if we have connected airports and you know, we're working with that sort of connection with Schiphol. Schiphol has a cargo community system, and if we work with a variety of other major airports that we typically trade with, and we have these electronic connectivity, we have digital cargo, we know everything. Everyone in that supply chain knows everything about that cargo, from shipper to consignee. And that's the perfect system.
Yeah, well, that's fascinating. The airport also has been kind of instrumental in bringing the community together as well, because you don't have the space on your group at all. There are tons of warehouses around the airport.
Yeah.
And it's been interesting for me to see all the new announcements that keep coming in with things like ASOS, the British clothing brand that's got huge facility in Union City, and then you have the Krogers of the world that are close to the airport, and installing these new like robotic sorting systems to be more responsive on e-commerce. So it seems like e-commerce is actually on a trend that's going to continue to go through the roof, especially now, right?
Yeah. I mean,
Jorge? Oh, go ahead, Elliott. Sorry.
No, just quickly before Jorge, I mean, we've seen like a 20% increase in e-commerce, maybe more, over the last couple of months, just because of COVID. You know, everyone's home, they're ordering online. Amazon is doing fantastic. They've added 2 more flights over the last 3 months or so. So now we have 4 flights per day of Amazon, and it's tough because they're a tough client. They want speed, they want efficiency. And I like it because they push us to be better. You know?
Yeah. Jorge?
Yeah, I got a question for Regina, but also a quick question for
I just wanted to
Elliott.
say real quick too, Ani's got one more question. We're going to bring Regina in, then I'll let Ani ask his question. And I think we're going to be coming up on our time.
Okay, a question for, but also for Elliott, as a follow-on, something you mentioned on your follow-up with your question before we go to Regina. Elliott, could you very briefly mention the relationship that you have with the Aerotropolis group? We try to get them in this call, but we were not able to. But that's something that's of interest to all of us, not only from the word Aerotropolis, but also from the relationship on the different airports that Aerotropolis is part of that. And then following from that, from Regina, have you seen, you have a lot of relationship with manufacturers, etc. Is there any issues that you have identified through them that perhaps through this group we can help you solve the problems of some of the manufacturers that you deal with? So I have those 2 questions for Regina and for Elliott.
Very quickly, we are on the board of the Aerotropolis group. We participate in all their meetings. We share whatever their developments are and ours, and make sure that they integrate with each other. They're very important to us because the development around the airport is what helps sustain the airport, and we in turn, you know, they leverage our presence. So, you know, very quickly, we do work very closely together.
And you share practices with other airports too, like Charles de Gaulle and Schiphol and Shanghai, Pudong, and all these different airports as well. Yeah. I've had a lot of fun writing about that stuff over the years, just getting to visit all the different airports as I'm going around. So Regina, did you want to address Jorge's question?
Yeah, so Jorge, are you referring specifically to logistics and an increase in productivity?
Right.
That's actually, yes. If depending on what a manufacturer produces, if production, the rapidness of the increase in production, if that's, I guess that's the right way to say it, over the last few months, and the necessity to just scale so quickly many manufacturers had challenges with that. So if there are specific ones you're looking for, then certainly that's something I can address with you like later. Probably I wouldn't want to. No,
I was wondering if you, through your organization, have had a conversation with them around that, and maybe that's something that we can partner to
Oh yes, we actually haven't had a specific conversation on that. It has come up on calls, and we have discussed it, but we haven't anything specific. So that may actually very well be of interest. Okay. So yeah, let's talk about that. Yeah. All right.
And I think initially what I've heard from a lot of manufacturers is that, you know, even if they were running full tilt, they could not get their supplies in, you know, from other parts of the world that had shut down. Like Kia had to shut down, not so much for COVID, but because they couldn't get parts from Korea early on, when Korea was the kind of second country that was hit and everything shut down. The same thing with China initially. But I think that's sort of ironing itself out now, and some of the companies that have broader and more dispersed supply chains were actually better off because they could kind of pick and choose where they were sourcing from. At least that's my assumption. And what I've heard from like YKK and some other companies. Ani, did you have one more question? And I think we're gonna wrap it up here.
And this basically question is for the group, and I suggest Jorge and Guy to maybe form an email chain of the participants, because resilience in supply chain to me globally today is finding China plus one strategy. Everywhere in the world, every country is looking into, and this is in a good way. Be it USA, be it China, be it Brazil, companies are trying to find out that how do we move away from all eggs in one basket. And I will leave you with this thought, because recently, there was a lot of army military buildup between China and India borders, and the situation is very, very dangerous, and it is de-escalating, but it could be very changed. But the question which was going on in India, and I can go to the highest level, I can talk about the Indian embassy here as well as in ministries in India, is that even if we go for a war, how the supply chains will not be impacted, i.e. for medicine, so many critical aspects, your rare elements and all those things. That is the biggest challenge which we in USA and everywhere else we are going to be facing.
That's a good thought, Ani. The China plus one, it's something I just attended a seminar just about China and supply chain and etc. It's not going to be a complete decouple, but your notion of China plus one, it seems to be the topic that people are talking about. So
yeah, and people were talking about it even before all this happened.
Yeah,
exactly. It just kind of accelerated everything, and then
point.
on top of the trade war, right? So the trade war started it, and then COVID kind of pushed it into a new level completely.
Right.
And I think some of the things I've written even yesterday, the India-U.S. relationship is actually going to get a boost from all this. I think because with more emphasis on national security. And aligning with countries that believe in the same values that you do, I think that's going to benefit the U.S.-India cooperation on things like pharmaceuticals, food, defense, all kinds of things. So I think that's a kind of a silver lining in a way from all this. But there are certain companies like that I've seen, particularly that have their entire supply chain themselves is within China. So those are going to be the ones that are facing much more difficulty moving out of China because they get all their raw materials inside China. And then if you move to Vietnam, you still have to import everything from China to manufacture there. So I agree with you, Jorge. I think it's going to be slower than a lot of people expect in terms of this decoupling, and it's going to be harder than a lot of people expect, but it's definitely a way that different countries are positioning themselves for sure. I've heard it from Indonesia, I've heard it from India, I've heard it from recently Colombia. We just held an event with the ambassador of Colombia, and he was pushing the same sort of nearshoring idea that, at least Colombia is in your backyard kind of thing from the Western Hemisphere perspective. So for us,
don't forget, Brazil is in the backyard as well, and we're waiting for that Brazil-US relationship that has been signed to develop into more opportunities as well.
That's a good topic to follow up on, and Regina, that you'll play a big part of that because of all your
work. We actually had a webinar, as you know, Ben was on it a couple of weeks ago on that topic on preparing for diversifying your supply chain. Exactly. China plus one was a huge topic. We have a shameless plug. We have another one next week with the legal and financial aspects of that you can take advantage. So Super. It's huge.
Very cool. Well, yeah, I like that we're leaving this with more questions to discuss for later on. Unless anybody else has an interjection, I'll leave it to Jorge to close this out.
No, this is great. This is the purpose of this type of conversations, is to generate discussions and a debate, and see how we could all pull together. This will be a win-win for all of us to find opportunities. So absolutely, Jacobus, you would certainly play a big with the cyber piece of this also to help us out. So we'll be in touch. Thanks, Annie, for that suggestion.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you very much.
We will have the recording and we'll share it with y'all, and you can share it with friends and family if you want. Steve and Elliott, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yep.
Very much a pleasure. Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank
See
you.
y'all.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you all. Take care. Stay safe.